Hey everybody, welcome to On Grade. This is episode 8. I'm Brandon Wineline. I've got Devon Boudreau here from Rueben Excavation out of Princeton, Texas, just recently out of Canada. So I'll let you get started, Ruben. Welcome to the Devon. Welcome to the show, man. So tell us about yourself and how you got down here to Dallas from Canada.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Basically we've been going in Canada for about going on 4 years now, and just kind of decided it was time to make a change. We got looking at some different places and options. Big thing up north is anyone in the States, the northern states knows it too, but you end up with a short work season. You're about 8-9 months if you're lucky. And then you run into snow, frost. No one wants to pay for the extra stuff. So you end up doing snow removal in the winter to keep guys going. That's kind of a money-losing operation unless you're into it big time. There's lots of guys that make money at it, but you really got to be making that your thing. So we never really enjoyed it enough to make it our thing. And we got talking about making a move and going somewhere. We're going somewhere that ain't got no winter. And that was a short list at the southern U.S. basically. So Florida, Texas, Arizona. And we had a couple buddies that came down here and said, you got to check it out. So took a road trip, drove down. We were here 3 days, had some barbecue, and the decision was made. It was it. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah.
So I saw you're ex-military. So you served in the Canadian Armed Forces?
Yeah, I was a combat engineer in Canada. I was there for 3.5 years.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So what would you say, did you ever do any operations with U.S. forces, or was it mostly...
we came into Fort Bragg. We used to do stuff with that because we had started they started an airborne regiment up again when I was in PET, so I ended up getting into that. And that was pretty cool shit. But we got to work with the Americans back and forth a few times, and we always kind of made fun of it. It was kind of funny. Not made fun of it, but the Americans just had more money, right? The American military is just funded to the nines. It's like, it's what it should be everywhere, right? But most countries are just poor boying it. So you get the American military, they just throw more money at it, throw more guys at it, throw more monies at it, best of the best stuff. Whereas up in Canada, it was always kind of, they ragtagged it. And we had, I think when I was in the entire Canadian military with the reserve force was like 79,000 members for the entire military.
79,000.
Yeah. That's Navy, Air Force, and Army combined.
Insane, man.
Like Fort Bragg, North Carolina was like 100,000 guys just on one base. That's what it is, right? So that was the big difference. But in the military in Canada, like especially as an engineer, you're basically trained to do a little bit of everything. You're not single job, specialize in one thing. You always had a specialty of something, but everybody kind of got trained to do everything because we didn't have enough people to just do, you do this, you do this, you do this. You had to be more versatile and stuff. And that was the thing we noticed with the Americans is they had enough people that you could make people specialize to, this is your job, this is what you do, and you train to do this. Whereas up north, it was a little different. You were, today you're doing this, but tomorrow you're over here. So, that's just what it was. But
so as a vet of the U.S. Army, I can actually attest to this. It's not all you think it is. We have the same problem in the U.S. Army, believe it or not. As big as we are, I can't tell you how many times I'm working on radios or changing tires on Humvees or changing tracks on Brads. I've done pretty much everything you can think of. I've done it. So what made you decide to get into construction? Like, was that from the military, being an engineer, or what was it?
No, I kind of grew up around it. So my stepdad had a contracting company growing up, so I was always around it. Grew up in a small town. It was just kind of what it was. So as a kid, you were always around that stuff. And it was something that I always did because I had to, out of necessity. It wasn't necessarily something that I thought I enjoyed doing. And then the older in life you get, you start realizing that, you remember those things you did as a kid and you start liking them, and they're, it becomes something you miss almost. So I ended up going to college for construction management, thinking I'd get into doing, being a project manager and estimator. And after 6 months of doing that, I was like, yeah, no, there's no way I want to sit in an office my whole life. This is dumb. So I decided to join the military. It was just something I always wanted to do. Took off and did that. And when I got out, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I considered getting back into construction management and stuff. And my uncle was a crane operator, grandfather was a crane operator, talked me into going to take a crane course and going to be a crane operator. So again, something I didn't really want to do, but it was just like, yeah, it's good money. You go do it for a year or two in the oil patch and whatever. I ended up doing that, went up to Fort McMurray. I spent 7 years running crane. And then after a while, I just kind of gravitated back to construction. I got sick of working for other people, got sick of going to work the day in, day out. As a crane operator, you spend most of your days, running taxi crane, you're getting hired out to different companies. So I'd work for this company this day, this company that day. Every day you're sitting there watching people work. And after 7 years, you're not a pipe fitter, you're not a welder, you're not a, electrician or an iron worker or whatever, but you've seen this done thousands of times. So when guys are going to fit a couple flanges together and they're not lining up, well, I've seen guys have the same problem and, they fixed it by doing this. Well, you try to tell someone how to do something and they just look at you like you're retarded, yell at you, tell you to fuck off, you slam the door and watch them struggle for 3 hours. So after a while, you just stop making suggestions, by 2-3 years in, and you just watch people bash their heads against the wall for days on end. And that gets annoying after a while. And eventually I just got to the point where it was always a good job and it was a great career, and it is a great career, but I just wanted to do something on my own. So started doing renovations, decks, fences, kitchens, remodels, that kind of stuff. And honestly just fell into the excavation stuff. It was something that I'd always thought about doing, but never had a plan or a path or how I was going to get there. I just happened to have a buddy of mine who owned an HVAC company. He needed a gas line trenched in one day and called me up. He's like, hey, you know anyone who can trench a gas line in? Yeah, I'll go do it. Went and rented a mini hoe and dug a gas line in. 6 months later, I was doing so much excavation work that stopped doing all the construction renovation and just went full bore into it. Here we are.
So what year was that that you started doing that?
I started the renovation stuff, I think, in 2019, 2018. I always get screwed up on this. 2018, 2019 is when I started that. And then within about 6 months, I was into the excavation work, mostly doing sewer and water, residential tie-ins, repairs, that kind of stuff. That led into septic and small commercial and that kind of stuff. But so yeah, just kind of ran with it, went from there.
So what year did you actually start Rueben up? Was that 2019?
Yeah, 2018 is when I founded the company and then started working with it. Yeah, it would have been January 2019 is when we started working. So I started out with Rueben Construction. Year 2, we set up Rueben Excavation just because it was doing so much excavation work. Kind of had both going for a while, and then I just follow the money, right? So our margins are better on the excavation side of things. You're in and out of projects quicker. As much as I did enjoy the construction side of stuff, when you're dealing with clients on a project for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, changes happen. Things change. This doesn't happen. You end up with a lot of headaches. And I've always, even to this day, I find there's more headaches in the construction side of things versus the dirt work world. You're in and out quicker. You're usually starting the project off, so changes haven't happened to like the tile color and the paint on the walls, and we're going to put 16 more windows here, and that kind of stuff that just was a nightmare for me at the time. When it comes to the dirt world, well, they make changes, but you can always change dirt. It's pretty doable, right?
I think the funniest one that happened to me recently was I was in a pre-construction meeting for a Dutch Brothers Coffee almost a year ago, and they had all the civil contractors sitting in there, and it was us, the utility contractor, and the concrete contractor, and they started talking about the water faucets at the pre-construction meeting, and we're all civil guys. Now, they did have the plumber there and some other guys, and so my superintendent elbows me, and he goes, hey, man, bet you won't ask him. I said, what? He said, I bet you won't ask him what color the carpet is. I said, bet. So this owner's rep's sitting here talking about it. I mean, we've been there for 2 hours. A pre-con should be 30 minutes, right? And I finally go, hey, I got a question. He goes, yeah, what you got, Brandon? I said, hey, what color's the carpet? Everybody in the room busted out laughing, but him. And he, I got the snake eyes, go look. Yeah. I just went, my time is money, man. Yeah. And you're wasting my time. Yeah, exactly. So I need to get the hell out of here. I got to go do my job now. Yeah. I don't care. You're a rep and you can do what you do. That's great. That's not my job. So
yeah, a lot of times it's like, it's not ill intended, but people just have they don't get it. They don't think about it. They don't clue into the fact that, it's not, you're just wasting time. Yeah. Asking questions about things that don't matter. You're going to change your mind 4 times from now till then anyway. So why are we talking about this? Let's just get going, right? But yeah, it's funny how that all goes.
It does. And, I really am excited to have you on the show tonight, So how did the whole process of you kind of explained earlier how you were coming to Texas.
Yep.
What was the entire process of moving the company from Canada to Dallas? What was your procedure and how you guys did it and all that kind of stuff?
It is a logistical, paperwork, lawyer, money nightmare. You got to look at it like you are literally basically starting a company from scratch again. So, we just spent 4 years building a brand, building a company, building a reputation. You just get rolling, things are moving in the right direction. Things are going well. And then you decide, you know what? I'm just going to pull the rug out from under myself and just start this all over again. But coming down here logistically, so there's a couple ways you can do it. What we did is we set up a U.S. corporation. And in the U.S., there's 2 ways you can invest in the companies to come down here. So you can do an E2 or an E5 or EB5. They're basically investment visas. One's a green card investment, the other one's a work visa, and then you can transition into the other ones. So we did an E2 investor's visa. So basically we set up a new U.S. corporation down here, invested required money, equipment, assets, time and stuff, and then you come down here and you set up your U.S. corporation and go. The whole part of it is basically to incentivize people to create jobs and invest money into the U.S. to do that. Canada is like completely backwards. You want to go to Canada, well, they'll just open the door. Yeah, come on in. Don't matter. Where the U.S., you got to be bringing something to the table to come down here, which is, to me, it's awesome. And that's the funny thing in like seeing the 2 different markets. So if you go to Canada right now, every country in the world is full of immigration. The U.S., everybody wants to come to the U.S., but not everybody can come to the U.S. They make it hard for most people to come here, unless you live in Mexico and you can just walk across the border to get in here. But, for most countries, it's hard to come to the United States. You have to be actually bringing something to the table, contributing to society, making an improvement. Whereas in Canada, where we're from, there's a lot of people that are brought into the country that don't really contribute anything to it. So you end up with a lot of people coming in that are not really helping bring the country up. If anything, you're dragging it down, and from someone that grew up there my entire life, I served the military there. I was proud to be Canadian and stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's a great country and it's a great spot, but there's been a lot of political decisions that have been made in the last few years that have just really brought down the value of the country in a sense, and that trickles down into the workforce and it trickles down into how business is done. It trickles down everywhere and it just really affects everything. When there's no barrier to entry anymore, now it's a free for all and anyone can kind of do what they want. And it brings down the quality of it. We're coming to the States. It's not easy. It takes money. It takes time. It's a lot of work, but basically we had to hire immigration lawyers. They had to go and do all the paperwork for us, set up your investments, set up the company. You got to, prove everything as to where's the money coming from, where's the equipment coming from. It's a process. It's not a simple, easy thing, but I think it's worth it 100%.
That is awesome, though. I mean, it's really cool. When we first started talking and you told me your story, I was like, this is too cool. I got to have this guy on the show. Because, you hear about guys going to other states.
Yep.
But you never hear about a guy coming like, hey, I'm from Canada. I'm going to come down here and start an excavation company. And I'm not just going to like Minnesota or, North Dakota or Montana. No, I'm going to Texas.
Yeah.
I'm going to the other side of the country.
Oh, yeah.
Literally. So you've been down here a couple months now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the barbecue sold you, I'm sure.
Oh, 100%, man. And the people, man. Like,
yeah.
People down here are it's awesome, right? Like, people are welcoming, friendly, you get what you give, I find. And, and that's a big thing down here. Like, people are just very genuine, good-hearted, tell it to you like it is kind of thing for the most part. And definitely really like that part about it. Like,
that is awesome.
The people are huge. It's great.
I've never really been to Canada. I've been to Goose Bay. We're coming back from Germany.
Yeah.
We stopped there. They wouldn't let us off the plane. They actually made us sit in the plane while they refueled us. So that's the only experience I have in Canada was a bunch of Mounties around the plane, and they weren't letting us off. So we were like, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get off there anyway.
Yeah, I've heard that. So how was it bringing the equipment down? I can't imagine what that cost must have been. I know you have your own trucks, but I mean, it must have been brutal.
About $10,000 a load just to ship it. And then you got to import it. You got brokerage fees. So like each load that came down here was about $4,000 in brokerage fees. It's like for the broker to do the paperwork, set up the bond, do all that stuff, and then the shipping on top of that. So you're basically $14,000 roughly per load to come down. Any on-road equipment, so like our Peterbilt we brought down, that's got to go through an importation process. So if it's a commercial on-road vehicle, it's got to go to a registered importer's yard. So like our truck had to go, I drove the truck to Montana, Great Falls, parked it in the registered importer's yard. It sat there for 31 days because that's the hold period. And then, so drive the truck, fly to Edmonton, get the truck, drive to Montana, drop the truck off, get on a flight, fly back out of Montana, go back a month later to pick the truck up, then drive it down to Texas. So you got to do all this paperwork ahead of time to make sure that's clear to go. They inspect it, check the VINs, make sure you own the truck, all this stuff. They clear it to make sure it's good. Then you bring it to the yard. It sits there for a month, and then the U.S. government or the Border Service goes through the same paperwork that the importer just did to say, yeah, it is good to go. And then 31 days later, you can bring it in. So it's a process. Doesn't matter any way you cut it.
Well, it's the federal government. I mean,
Government's government.
They got a checklist to take a dump. So
yeah.
Made me think of The Rock. Government doesn't take it without a checklist. So what advice, since you really are starting over, I mean, yeah, you've got an advantage. You have your own equipment. You've been around the block now. Estimating, all that stuff.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody that's going out on their own? I mean, this is what this episode's about, I have some points that I want to talk about, but I'm going to let you have the floor first. What are some things that you would give to that guy that's sitting in a cab right now, maybe listening to this going, tired of being treated like crap, tired of working for these huge companies and being treated like a number. I want to go out on my own. What would you tell them?
Well, I mean, the first thing, it's a personal, you got to really do some soul searching and figure out what it is you really want, because, you and I, we're in business, and we know that, you start a business and the next day you're filthy rich and everything's easy and there's no problems, right? So it's just easy and good. That's what everyone thinks, that you own a business and you're just making money and there's no headaches and it's the way to go. But the reality is when you start a business, you're basically signing up to deal with 10 times more than you could ever imagine, deal with more problems, more headaches. Like, you are the dumping ground. Everyone's got a problem and they're dumping it on your lap. And the whole point of being in business is to solve problems. That's just what it is. Every business in the world solves a problem. You want to start a business, find a problem and solve it. You got a business. That's what it is, 100%. But you got to be prepared for what that entails, because you got employees and vendors and customers, and they all have problems, and you're the one who's got to deal with them all. And a lot of people just don't really have the mental capacity to deal with that. A lot of people are really intended or to be employees, and there's nothing wrong with being an employee, man. You can make some good money. You can make a hell of money working in a company, being a kick employee. But if you're not happy being an employee and you want to have your own thing and you want to run your own company, then you got to be prepared to take a step back and really assess what it is that you're prepared to deal with. And then once you've made that choice, it's pretty simple. Find the problem that you're going to solve, figure out how you're going to solve it, and build your company around that. And that's business 101. You do that, and then you got to make the decision that you're going to commit to it and go. Because a lot of people will step, oh, well, I'm going to work here and then part-time this. And man, you got to decide you're quitting your job tomorrow, burn the boats and go all in, because you're going to go through some hard, you're going to deal with some stuff. And if you got a plan B, or an escape route out of it, the minute it gets hard, you're going to peel out and go. I'm sure you can remember the first time that you were burnt and you couldn't make payroll or something like that. And then you're just like, dude, the thoughts in your head, what did I do? Like, I'm an idiot. I should have stayed doing this or whatever. Then you figure it out and you get through it. And then 3 days later, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad, and now, those problems have compounded 10 times over, and they come and you figure a solution out and you keep moving, right? But the first time you hit that big problem when you can't make payroll, or, you get burnt huge in a job or something gets destroyed, or, that first big problem is really the test. That's how big are your balls at that point, right? And what do you really want? And that you got to be prepared for that. You have to know that you are going to get tested in business. And the first test you get isn't necessarily the hardest test you're going to deal with, but it is the hardest in reality because you've never done anything like that before. You never had that, and that's the biggest thing. People really need to be aware what becoming an entrepreneur is or starting a business. It's not all sunshine and roses and rainbows, but I think it's something that, like you've always had this inclination in the back of your head that you wanted to have your own company or you wanted to be in business, and if nothing else, at some point in your life, you realize that your own company, but it's not just a passing thought. Like, it's a desire that you want to do it. And I think that's something that all entrepreneurs and all business owners have in common. And if you got it, you'll know it, and you just need to be prepared to go to do it.
I tell everybody it's like the Battle of Little Bighorn, and your Custer, and you got to make every shot count, man. Because if you don't, it's you're full of arrows pretty quick.
100%, man.
I'll tell you, I got a bunch sticking in my back right now. So, my advice I would give is make a plan before you go out on your own. Make a plan. Something I didn't do.
No, me either.
I didn't write a business plan. I wrote 3 now.
Yep.
I'm 4 years old and I wrote 3 business plans. Everybody's like, why are you still writing business plans? Because there's expansion things I want to do, like we talked about. I want to get into trucking, get back into utilities eventually going again. So there's other avenues I want to approach, but I need to write a business plan because I need to set goals. I need to set expectations. I need to set things that I want to achieve in certain milestones. The other thing you got to look at is the saturation of what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to be strictly excavation, I'll tell you the niche right now to get into is the little small guys that are putting in driveways, guys that are digging ponds, doing arenas, all that kind of stuff, doing land clearing.
Yep.
There's such a market for it right now because there's a ton of development going on. But the other thing too is there's not a lot of guys chasing that work.
Yep.
Everybody's chasing the big now. Everybody's going for the 1 million square foot building pads, the cookie cutter commercial jobs, the big neighborhoods that they're benching 500 lots. Those are the jobs everybody's going after. So if you're kind of looking, you got to find your niche. 100%. That's the other key. You got to find a niche. If you don't find a niche, you're just going to fizzle up just like the rest of them.
Yep.
The other thing you need to learn is you need to learn costs. Nobody gets that right. I don't care who you are. Everybody here is underbid a job, overbid a job.
90% of guys in business don't even understand cost.
Yeah, no. You're literally shooting in the blind 90% of the time. You're just you have estimated guesses.
Yep.
Is what you're doing, and you are praying to God that the numbers you came in with will still work when they give you the contract 60 days later. And then you go, well, I can't honor these prices because diesel's gone up. And they go, well, we're going to give the job to somebody else. And then you go, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to eat crow and have to make this work. So that's the other things you got to look at. The other things you got to look at is overhead.
Yep.
That's a big thing that nobody really wants to talk about. That's the elephant in the room is, oh, I want to have this estimator. I want to have my company trucks. I want to have the office. I want to have the ivory tower. Well, that all costs money. And it's money you're not getting paid to have that. That's money that is being burned out of all the jobs you're doing at once.
Yep.
You and me have offices. You and me have locations that we do business out of. If I could, I'd do it out of my truck still. I tell everybody all the time. If I could, I would. When you're running a larger excavation company, you can't do that, though.
No. The minute you get staff, you need a spot, you need place. And I mean, I'll be honest, like, I enjoyed running out of my truck for years. That was my office. That's what it was. But having an office space is a nice, like, you can sit down, you can focus, you can get more. I find you're more productive in an office for sure.
And you can shut it off.
From a cost perspective, it's another expense. And, the one thing I've got a couple guys younger, that started. I had a guy that used to work for me that actually kind of went on his own. He worked for me. I fired the guy, and great kid, good worker and stuff, but he was still a kid, right? So, showed up late a few times. I fired him. And when I fired him, I told him, like, man, you're a good worker. You got a good work ethic. I was like, you just got to figure out what it is you want to do. 4 or 5 months later, he comes back, texts me back. He's like, hey, I think I figured out what I want to do. I was like, all right, what do you want to do? I want to have my own company like you do. Well, you better get ready, So he's into it, and I told him right from the get-go, I was like, you don't need to go out and buy equipment and buy trucks and buy things. I was like, if you got the cash to do it and you can afford to do it, great. If you can't rent a piece of gear and go do a job and make enough money on it, you shouldn't be in business. It's just plain and simple. Are your margins better when you own the equipment? Yeah, probably, depending on the length of on how long you own it, the financing terms, all that stuff. But there's an argument to be made for both things. Like, you don't need to go and buy every piece of gear. You don't need to go and buy everything. And when you're starting out, you got a lot of stuff to learn, and you can read all the books you want. You can do all the courses you want, but there's a lot of stuff you're just going to learn by being in business. And it's a whole lot easier to rent a piece of gear and learn a hard mistake and then bring that piece of gear back than to be tied to a massive payment and screw things up, and then you're really upside down. So especially young guys starting out want to get into it, man, go work for somebody. Learn some skills, learn how to do the job, and then go pick up some side jobs. The guys that we hate that are always, undercutting, for cheap.
The guy with his little trailer and skid steer that low bids the job.
Yeah,
he doesn't know what things cost.
Pretty much, right? But at the same time, it's like, if you can go out and work for somebody and learn the job and learn what things really cost and charge what you're supposed to charge to do it. Don't go work. You work for $30 an hour for somebody or $25 an hour for somebody, and you rent a piece of gear and then rent it or charge them out $50 an hour. You don't have a business. You're making more money than you were making as an employee on paper, but when you actually figure out your costs, you're not. And then when you account for your insurance and your advertising and your overhead and the truck and the fuel, when you, like you said, learn your costs and you sit down with a piece of paper and figure out what everything costs, that $50 an hour doesn't cover anything. You just worked for free, and the $50 covered maybe most of your overhead, if that. But learning your cost and learning your numbers is huge. And I mean, you can go sit with an accountant. You can have a consultation with an accountant. You can go online. You can do a million things to figure these things out. The resources are there. You got to look for them, but nobody ever does until they're into it.
That's what I'm about to say. I was shaking my head no, because I'm going, nobody does that.
No,
but
I didn't.
I didn't either.
I'm just speaking from experience. This is what you should do.
I'm like, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. I'm third generation in construction. They figured it out. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Boy, was I wrong.
Oh yeah.
This is my second go at it. You know that. I told you that. I had another company with two other guys, and I fell fat on my face over there.
Yep.
I learned a lot.
Oh yeah.
So when I went out on my own this time, I sat down with my mom. I said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to start off lean and mean. We're going to rent. We're going to have the contractors pay for the equipment, all that stuff. And we started off that way. And we were making dang good money.
Yep.
I had like 3 guys. That's all I had.
Yep.
I was bidding the jobs. I was PMing them. I was sitting on the job while they were doing it. So I was making sure it was getting done. And we started growing. And that's the key, is you got to find the right guys too. These guys that you're going to go after too, when you're building your company, are not going to be cheap.
No.
And you have to be humble. That's the other thing that people cannot seem to grasp. You don't get to go drive the brand new F550 Platinum because it looks cool. And you can put your slip tank on the back and you put an 8-inch lift on it and 37 mud tires and all that. Now, go get you a nice, good diesel truck that can pull a skid steer around. I'm not saying you don't get something nice, but don't go buying a Laramie. Don't go buying, get a tradesman. Get a LT or whatever,
Spend the money where it counts.
Yeah, get a truck that's going to pull it, that's going to be 4-wheel drive, that's going to be able to pull a gooseneck trailer with a skid steer or a mini excavator on the back. And when you start making the money, okay, yeah, go buy yourself what you want. There's guys I know that they're clearing $10,000 to $12,000 a week just owning a skid steer.
Yep.
And they haven't paid off in a year. So they know what they're doing, but they know their costs, like we just talked about.
Yep.
Those guys make. So I'm going to tell everybody listening to this that's thinking about going out on their own. Those guys, and Devon will vouch on this.
Oh, yeah.
The guys that have one skid steer, maybe a bunch of attachments for it, 5, 6 attachments. They can do everything with a skid steer. I'm going to tell you right now, they'd bring home more money a week than me and Devon will ever bring home.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
It's the economy of scale. And that's the thing that I've said this numerous times to numerous guys. If you get a small company with 2 or 3 really good guys and yourself, even yourself and one guy, you're going to make more money and have less headaches than you or I are ever going to have. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is, sure, there's a point where you're going to grow a company to a point where you can start making money. But that point is not year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You might be probably 10 to 15 years down the road before you're really going to start seeing the reward of those years of work. And that's still a maybe. It's not a guarantee. It's a maybe. You got to make it through those 10 years and do all the right things to get to that point where the guy that has the one guy, the skid steer, and goes out and does those jobs, or just himself, and you do it right, you're going to make money and you can have a real life and a real good career like that. It just depends on what do you want, and you get into it and you know what it's like. You start getting busy and then there's work and they want you to do more work. You do more work. So you buy more gear, you rent more gear, and you get more guys. And all of a sudden you just kick that snowball down the hill and it gets to the point where it's so big, you can't go backwards now. You're into it. Right. And everyone wants different things and they're cut from different cloths. But if I could give anyone starting out some advice, go do this small 1 or 2 guy show for 4, 5, 6 years before you really make that jump. Even though the work's there and they're pushing you to go bigger and do more, just back off and spend a couple of years working by yourself. Make sure you get your numbers right. Make sure you got cash put ahead. Make sure you got everything ironed out and you've learned all the lessons before you go big, because I didn't and you didn't. And you got to figure it out, right?
Best advice I ever got was from a great mentor of mine. He used to be a rival. He's not in the business anymore. He does trucking now. He's a broker doing trucking.
Yeah.
And best advice he ever gave me when I went out, we used to go neck and neck on bids all the time. And he'd call me if I want a job. Did you bid this job? Yeah, I did. You get it? Yeah. So I'd call him too. We'd go back and forth. We had a rivalry going on for a long time. It was a fun rivalry.
Yeah.
But we still went to lunch once a month. That's what the kind of rivalry we had. We still went to lunch. And whoever won more jobs that month bought lunch.
Hey, that's a good thing.
Yeah, So, anyways, this was years ago. This was probably 2-3 years ago. But it was funny because he told me when I went out on my own and I was starting to grow, he said, how much you got sitting in the bank? I don't know. I told him a number. He says, you got about 1/8 of what you need to have in the bank to operate a commercial construction company.
Yeah.
I looked at him. I says, what? He says, you need to have at least $500,000 sitting in that operating account at all times.
Yep.
I looked at him and said, ain't no way, man. I'm not making that. He goes, well, if you're not making that, then why are you as big as you are?
Yep.
So I'm still not there. I don't think anybody is. But he said that. He said, you should not be messing with commercial work unless you have $500,000 sitting in the checking account at any time that you need it, because you don't get paid. You got to carry up forward costs. You got to carry forward materials. You got to carry forward diesel, labor, equipment payments. And he's right. I mean, if your overhead's $200,000 to $250,000 a month, think about it. That's only 2 months.
Yeah. $500,000 don't even touch
that.
Yeah,
guys listening right now that are probably getting ready to go on their own, they're going, oh my God, that's a lot of money. It's like water. I tell everybody, money in this business is not money. It's fuel. All it does is keep you going down the road.
In one door, out the other, man.
It does not. You're not in Wall Street where you can take $500,000 and turn it into $200 million in a month. It's not going to happen. You have to consistently grow it. And it's a slow and steady wins the race, man. It ain't I just got $200 million in contracts awarded and all this stuff. These guys that are growing at these massive rates right now and the economy slows down, they're going to be the first ones shutting their doors. The guys like us that are kind of staying slow and steady and growing gradually, adding a machine here, adding a machine there, they'll be around.
Well, the big thing you got to look at is everyone looks at the big number, and guys in business, I know guys in business that they don't even know the difference between gross profit and net profit. They look at, I bid the job for $1 million. I'm making $1 million. No, man, you got $600,000 of material. You got $200,000 with diesel. You got $200,000 of wages. You're making $20,000 on this job, man. And you've spent $40,000 the day you got the check because I got $1 million. And that's the biggest problem in this industry is guys in the dirt world. I find, and a lot of people probably agree with me on this. They know dirt, and they're not business people first. They're tradesmen or they're dirt work guys first. Business is just the second thing they do. And the reality is if you want to run a company and you want to run a successful one, you need to make being a businessman your first priority. And you need to understand your numbers and you need to understand your cost and you need to understand all of that before you go stick a shovel in the ground. And if you're going to do it the backwards way, like we both did, you should start off small with yourself.
Uh-huh.
You know, maybe one guy, and learn all those backwards lessons when you're small, because the bigger you get and the bigger the jobs get, you don't fix those problems. They just get bigger, you know, and that's one of the hardest lessons to learn. You know, I learned it the hard way. You learned it the hard way. We all did, you know, and some guys don't ever learn. They just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. You know, the biggest thing is you got to be willing to learn steady.
You got to make every move count.
Yeah.
That's the other key. The other key that you got to look at too is you got to know, what do you need to bill every month? What's that bottom line number that's going to keep the doors open? Because I'll tell you right now, you have to pay your suppliers, you have to pay your guys, you have to pay equipment payments, and you have to pay all your taxes and whatever else you got to pay depending on where you're at. Here in Texas, we don't got to worry about that as much. The only taxes we worry about is at the end of the year, but that's why you pay a really good CPA.
They're not an expense. They're an investment.
Yeah, that's an investment. The other thing, too, you need to learn about is you need to learn how retainage works. You need to learn how devaluation of your equipment works. You have to, every year, devaluate your equipment a certain amount of money, because if you don't, you're going to pay more in taxes.
Yep.
And that's the key that, you know, we're sitting here talking about construction, but it's like, why are they talking about taxes? Well, if you want to be successful in this business, you got to know the ins and outs. You got to know the game. If you don't know the game, you're going to be a dinosaur.
Well, you got to realize too, like, people see the big number, you know, what's a big commercial cut and fill job worth here, you know, millions. But the margin on that is so small that 2 or 3% makes a huge difference to you, because you're operating on the margin. You're not operating on the big number. You're operating on that little number. You save 2-3% on taxes, or 1% on taxes. That's a huge number. You save 0.5% on diesel cost. That's a huge number for you in the bottom line.
You save $1 a yard on cut to fill, man.
Yeah,
that's profit.
That's the thing, and that's the thing that people don't realize. All those little tiny percentages and costs are where you live and die by, you know. And that's really what comes down to learning your numbers, learning what things actually cost, learn how to bid properly, factor your cost when you're bidding.
When he showed that sheet on for Monday,
yeah, man,
and I'm not going to say his name here, and he said, I'm getting this bid and this number. I went, dude, I'm moving this Indiana, dude. I'm coming. I'm knocking on your door, bro. I will move just as much dirt as you do, buddy. Trust me. I'm telling you. I couldn't believe that. I said, there ain't no freaking way you could do that down here. They would laugh you out of the room.
Yep.
You can't bid that way down here. And he's very fortunate. He's in a very good area for it. I wish we had that luxury. I've always heard that, though. The guys up north in the Midwest do a little better than everybody else. But I'd always heard that. And now seeing it with my own two eyes, I went, whoa.
But the thing that you got to remember, being up north, the Midwest in the U.S. is the same as being north in Canada. You're spreading that out on an 8-month work season. So you're making your margin in 8 months to cover your overhead for 12. And that's the thing that we always ran into too. We'd make good money for 8 months of the year. We'd lose money for 3 months. So you got to factor in that cost to operate for those 3 months, to keep your guys on payroll, to keep the equipment payments made, to keep the shop paid for. All that stuff comes out of the 8 months. So when we look at here, and you got to say a 12-month work season, yeah, the margin is less on the job, but the total for the year, that's where when you look at different areas, there's outside factors to consider. But yeah, they are doing substantially better.
I was going to say though, still, dude. I mean, even if we get half of what they get, oh God, yeah, it's just insane. The problem is here is it's so saturated.
Yeah.
You have so many contractors here. You know, and, you know, I talked to you about my plan for my future is, you know, I'm going to go down the road and sell this or whatever, or EOE it or whatever I plan on doing, and go buy my little dump truck and skid steer and a little D5.
Simple life, man.
Little 320 and dig some ponds and maybe have one guy. I'm going to pay my bills. I'm going to run my cows, get my ag exemption, start my little rifle range, and probably run my podcast still. And
that's a dream life, man.
You know, that's the goal, man. Is I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, man. That's another thing we should talk about. This is not something you get into knowing that you got to have an exit plan, and that's where a lot of guys don't. You see these guys that own these companies for 70, 80 years, they just die. They hand it off to their kid. The kid doesn't want it. then some huge corporation sucks it up, or it dies.
Yep.
It just dies with the generation. So that's something you got to think about too. Like, hey, I want to go build this company and I want to make millions of dollars and all. Dude, if you can pay your bills, if you can pay your mortgage, pay your grocery bill, keep the lights on in the house, you're winning, man.
100%.
If you can pay your guys, you can pay your suppliers. You ain't got to worry about the repo man looking for your truck, looking for the equipment. You don't got the credit card company calling you. You're doing good, man. Everybody's like, oh, that sounds terrible. I'm like, well, that's construction. I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't like you just said, but I'm going to use a U.S. Army term. It ain't all rainbows and horseshoes here, Holmes. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is a business that can suck you up and beat the ever living life out of you.
Oh yeah.
To the point that you're miserable, you're depressed, and you got to have an out.
Well, it all comes back to deciding what it is you really want. Like, what's your why? What's your reason for being in business, right? And I think some guys get into it and they just do it because they want to have a job or they want the fancy truck or whatever. Other guys get into it because they do love business or they want to be an entrepreneur and build their own thing. Other guys want to see how big they can get, how far they can go, how hard you can push it. I think it all comes back to having purpose, right? So guys that work their whole life, or like you or I, we couldn't just retire tomorrow and go sit on a beach. You know, there's no such thing. It's great for 3-4 days and then you're bored. You know, what do you do now, right? You got to be doing something. And that's where it comes back to, you know, what's your goal? What's your why? What's your reason? You know, whether that's exiting the company at some point and having the dump truck and the 320 and the little dozer and doing ponds, having a ranch, you know, guys like us aren't ever going to stop working and just retire. That's a pipe dream. So I think a lot of guys get into the business, you know, not having an exit plan, and then they build the company and then it's like, well, what else am I going to do? Right. So they just keep going with it. And then it gets to the point where they die or the kids take over or whatever. I think that's how a lot of those end up, is because they don't have a plan as to what they want, you know, and there ain't nothing wrong with running a company forever if you like doing it, but it's definitely taxing. It's not a stress-free life.
It will take years off of you. I'll tell you that. It is a thankless job. As the man said earlier, you will literally have everyone coming at you about everything, and always remember everything's your fault.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
It's never the GC's fault. It's never the client's fault. So this is another thing that I'm going to warn everyone. Your first year in business, I want to explain something to you. This is going to happen. It's going to come to you no matter what you do in business. Your first client is going to ask you to do something that is completely free, and you're going to do it. And I'm going to tell you something. You're going to do it. You're not going to notice it because you're still small and you don't have a lot of costs yet and all that stuff. And you'll do it. And you don't even think about it. You just feel good about doing it, you know, because you're a good person. And a year or two goes by. You're going to get burned on something when you do that. And then you're going to get bitter. And then people are going to ask you to do something for free. And you're going to go, I don't even get out of bed for free. And then they're going to ask you to come back and fix something. And you're going to send them a change order for some outrageous amount of money. And they're going to be like, well, I don't understand why you're back charging me this much. Well, because my time is not free. My guy's time isn't free. My equipment's not free. The air I'm breathing's not free. And you're not going to take anything from me. So that's something that I had to learn. And it's not discussed much when I hear these other podcasts. They don't talk about this part. You know, everything's always about the labor shortage or, you know, we're doing this to make the clients pay fat. Nothing's working, guys. Let's just talk about the realistic stuff here for a minute. And I think that's why people like this show. I'm blunt. I don't hold back. I haven't held back since I started this. And you even said it the other day. You said, I love listening to your show because you're just blunt. You're like,
Tell it like it is, man.
You know, if you don't accept it for what it is, and then, you know, then don't be here, because we have an issue that needs to be addressed. We have a lot of issues in this industry. This is one of the most backwards, corrupt, stuck in the old ways industries.
Think about it. When was the last time you went to the restaurant, had a meal, and then told them, hey, that was a really good meal. Thanks for making that. I'll come back and pay you in 60 days.
Yeah.
What? You know, that's the industry. And I mean, the way the business is done in this industry, it has to change. Yep. It's got to change, because at the end of the day, you have all these developers and these big GCs at the top that are making all the money, because they're controlling how it's played out. And then you have all the other guys at the bottom that are too dumb to organize or to say no or to stand their ground or to demand better terms. And they just go and do it because they start small, they get big quick, they got too many bills, and they can't say no to this job. They can't say no to that job. They got to take the job. They got to take the lower price. They got to take terms because they got to go make payroll or they got to do this. So the problem starts at the beginning by not knowing how to run a business properly. And then it just gets compounded. And then the guys at the top take advantage of that. And it forces the whole industry to be run so friggin' backwards. And it's to the point now that it's like, something's got to change, you know? And I mean, why should we, as the contractor or the sub coming to the site, be bankrolling the developer who's building the building? You know, like why am I paying for your material on the project that you're going to make millions of dollars on? You know, why is the little guy who's making a little, 10, 12, 15% if they're lucky on this project footing the bill for free? Yeah. Do I get to charge interest when I carry a bill for 3 months?
Yeah.
You can put it in your contract. They ain't going to pay it. No.
I love that. You change something in the contract and you get it approved, and then you'll tell them, and they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to honor that. It's like, if I don't do that, I get sued.
And they say, well, sue me.
Yeah. So I actually started doing that.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I've sued people while I'm still on their job. You'd be surprised how many times I've actually just gotten it taken care of. I'm like, hey, I'm not coming back. It's in my contract, and there ain't nothing they can do about it. They can try, back charge me, all that. I'm like, that's cool. I'll call my lawyer. And as soon as you tell them you're going to call that's also the difference between being a new guy and also being 4 or 5 years into the game, like you and I are, and they'll go, okay, this guy's got teeth. He's going to have the money to call a lawyer and sue me and
cause a headache.
Yeah,
it's going to
make it a nightmare for me.
But it shouldn't have to be that way, and that's the thing. And I mean, if everybody in the industry just said, you know what, we ain't doing it this way no more, it would change. And
that's why we need to, as a contractors, and this is something that I'm going to work on the next 12 months, and it's in a plan. But On Grade is going to do it, and I'm going to start having roundtables, and whether it's on Zoom, whatever, I'm going to record it.
Yep.
I'm going to put it up on YouTube, and I'm going to put it on the podcast. Like, I'm going to be like, hey, this is what we need to do. We need to change the industry for better. I hear these guys talking about it all the time. I'm not going to name names, but we know who they are. Well, we need to just change the industry. It starts with us. And it's like, no, it doesn't just start with us. It starts with the dudes at the top.
Yep.
The dudes at the top have been running the game. We can buy all the training videos you want us to buy and get all the fancy websites you want. I ain't got crap to do with this, dude. This is straight up reading a contract. Teach people how to read contracts. You want good operators? You want these companies to succeed? Train them in the right ways. Train these project managers. Train these estimators. It's a dying breed, man. It's a dying knowledge. There's so many guys now that estimate that miss so much crap.
Yep.
And it's just, there's so many things that they could do better, and they're shooting in the general direction. I'll give them that. But they're completely missing what they should be shooting for.
Yeah, technology's helping a lot with that gap, and it's definitely making things better and more accurate. But the problem is that it's making it better and more accurate to make the bids leaner and make things lesser. And the margin's not going up. The accuracy is just getting better at keeping it cheaper on our end.
Yep.
And that's the thing. And that's really where it comes back to, commercial work and the big projects and the big jobs. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's good work, all that stuff. But there's a lot of headaches that come along with that too, that you don't have so much in the residential space or in the smaller markets or when you're doing a little niche job, and that's the thing. And that's really where it comes down to when you're starting out. Before you go getting big, you should really take a good hard look around and see what it is you want to do, because one guy with a skid steer and a truck doing jobs for homeowners or putting driveways or patios or arenas, you don't have a lot of these headaches that you do on the big commercial side of things.
And you can get money up front, and you get paid when you're done.
You make your terms.
Yeah.
You do.
You make the rules, guys. Like, that's the thing you should look at. You should make your own rules, and you should have your own contract that you write Loctite.
Yep.
I would recommend you go speak to a lawyer when you get ready to write a contract for construction, especially if you're starting up a business. Sit down with a lawyer, especially they're called construction attorneys.
Yep.
And Devon can vouch on this. They'll write you a Loctite contract. And most of them will write a fair one. That'll be state law. It'll be to the letter what the laws are in the state of Texas or wherever you're at. The other thing I want to talk to you about is I think contractors as a whole, we need to start having, I think what will help us out too is, especially in the commercial sector, in the industrial and multifamily stuff, we need to get to the point where we're licensing guys and we're bonding guys. Because I know in Canada you had to do all that.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys had way better competition. Your margins were probably better. Your bids weren't like this, going skyrocket to the moon and one guy down on the dirt. I mean, that's what you have here.
There's barriers to entry, right? So like, depending on what you're trying to do, there's barriers to entry to get in there. You're not just bidding any job you want. And I mean, you have that here with the municipal work and stuff. Obviously you got to be bonded and all that stuff and whatnot. And I mean, it still comes back to the GC that's going to accept that bid anyways. They're not stupid. When they get that bid that's $250,000 less than the next closest one, they know there's something missing in that contract, and they just look at it as, well, 2/3 of the work done before he runs out of cash and we run him off, and then we bring somebody in and do the rest of it, and they're still ahead, right? And that's just an industry problem, right? Like it starts at the top, but it's the bottom too, right?
The biggest thing that we talked about on the episode on Monday, contracts.
Yep.
That's your money's made before you start a job. Everybody's like, what? I'm like, your money's made on that contract. If you write a Loctite contract and your scope of work is legit,
yep,
and you attach your proposal to that with the quantities, all that stuff, you're set, man.
Yep.
You got them by you know what, and you're going to get the legitimate change orders that you should deserve.
You get a fair shake.
Yeah, you're going to get a fair shake in the contract. You'll be hard pressed once you get it. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be hard pressed to lose money on a job. It can happen. It still can happen. Weather, labor issues, maintenance issues. Machines breaking down on you. It happens, but it's a rare event. You should be profiting minimum 10% on a job. Once you kind of got your numbers locked, you know what stuff's costing. Now that materials kind of are leveling out again, we should be getting back to that again, that 15%. But there for a little bit with this escalation crap, it was getting like 10%. But now that it's kind of leveling out again, we should be getting more into the 10% realm, 10 to 15%. And
that's the thing you got to look at too, right? Like running a company on 10%, you're tight. Everything counts, right?
Yep.
And that's where it comes back to, getting into niche markets, being in more diverse things, going into areas that have less competition, and those are all things you really need to consider and look at when you're starting out. But it comes back to, don't just dive into the big pond right when you start out, go into commercial work and stuff, because you can get chewed up and spit out real quick.
Be the big fish in the small pond.
Yep.
Tell you that right now. I wish I could go back to myself 4 years ago and go, hey, I know that developer just called you about this job. There's a guy down the street needs a pond dug. You're going to make twice as much money and have half the headaches, and you're going to make your money a lot quicker. But everybody wants to have the wrapped trucks and the wrapped excavators right off the interstate and have their buddy in the truck be like, see, that's me right there. That's my guys working.
It's more the ego takes over.
It's cool. It's cool. I've been that guy. It's cool. But now I go, that's cool. Oh, they screwed up that job. Oh, crap. Look at that pile. Oh, dude. Now it's like, oh, yeah, that's cool.
It's cool till you're into it.
Yeah.
Once you're into it and it becomes normal, then it's
just not. And then it's unfortunate you don't trust anyone anymore. It gets to that point, and that's the other dark side of this business that nobody wants to talk about. But make sure you document everything, emails and text messages. I'm telling you this right now. Friendly advice for anybody that's going out on their own. Everything needs to be in an email. Everything needs to be in a text message, and save it.
And honestly, if it's not, you're on a phone call with the project manager or the superintendent, and they want to change something, and you discuss it on the phone, you follow that up with an email.
Yep.
Highlighting exactly what we just talked about. This is da-da-da-da-da, and they have to acknowledge it back so that you have proof that you were okay to go do this work or make this change or whatever, because otherwise you ain't getting paid.
Guys, I want to say this. Don't take this as doom and gloom. We're not here to not sell you on starting your own business or anything, but we want you to understand that there are several things that you need to make sure you're doing correctly, and that's one of them. That's a key thing. The other thing is finding good employees, and that's a very hard bargain to ask right now at the moment.
Well, it's twofold too, right? Like finding good employees, you can get lucky. You can find some good guys, you can get lucky. But I think you got to be more of the mindset that you're going to build good employees, and that's really what it comes down to. Sure, it'd be great to go out and put an ad out on Indeed and get, 20 guys that show up and they're all awesome and everything's all great. But, you hire enough people and you go through enough interviews and you look at enough resumes, none of that matters. You can find the best resume, have the best interview, meet a great person, they come out at the job site and they're useless. So at the end of the day, you're really shooting in the dark when it comes to that. You might get lucky and get a good guy, but 9 times out of 10, it's probably not going to be as good as it seemed on paper and in the interview and in the conversations and all that. So what I've always done is, everyone that I've hired, I don't hire on skill. I don't hire on ability. I don't hire on what they know. I hire on their attitude. Are they a good person? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to eat sandwiches and come to work every day and show up on time? You can build a really good team of people, but you have to be willing as a business owner. It's, I guess, twofold. You got to be willing and you got to be able to eat the cost of taking 6 months to build somebody into a good employee. Because if you get somebody that's got a little bit of experience, but they got the right attitude, in 6 months, you can make a really good employee out of them. But the first 3 months, it's going to cost you money because they don't know, or they're screwing things up, or they're making mistakes, or they're smashing that machine. And you got to be willing to know that going in that, okay, well, the first 3 to 6 months here, this is going to cost me money. But if you pick the right person, it's an investment. And then you build a team of people, and that's how you can definitely do it,
And you treat your guys like they're one of your own. You treat them like they're like family. If you treat your guys like family, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do the same to you. They're going to take care of your machines. They're going to check their machines every morning. They're going to take pride in their work.
100%, man. Like without your employees and without that team, you're nothing. And that's the thing that a lot of people forget sometimes.
Yeah. I've worked for the big boys. You have too. I've been the number, and it's not a good feeling. And I think people need to realize that even these big guys, they need to realize that these guys have families, they have lives, and they deserve to, make a good living and be treated with some form of respect. And that's unfortunately not many people nowadays.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, money and a wage only go so far. You can pay somebody great money, but if work environment and they hate going to work every day and they don't like working with the people they're working with or their boss, they're only going to stay so long. Mm-hmm. And then you just lost money again and you got to replace them and do it all over again. Yep. At the end of the day, money's important, but when it comes to an employee, that's not the only thing. It's not the only thing to look at. They got to have a good work environment. They got to enjoy coming to work every day. They got to know that you appreciate them being there. And it doesn't take a whole lot to make a person feel appreciated, right? Yeah. It's just being conscious of that. It's an art form on its own.
You're not lying, man.
Just one of the balls that you got to juggle running a business.
Exactly.
But you need it. It's important. And without it, you're screwed. Go back to being the one guy in the skid steer.
Absolutely. In closing, brother, what are y'all's plans moving forward?
Down here, we came down and we kind of looked at the market and what things are going on. Obviously with the way the economy's going, the residential space, the market kind of slowing down there. Commercial work seems to be still moving along. We've definitely decided that, the next couple of years, we're not trying to ramp up, get huge scale. It's just going to be lean, small, keep it what it is, and definitely carve out niche markets. I've always liked having a mix of doing residential work and some commercial work. You can kind of go back and forth and float between the two, and it gives you a kind of good spread and a balance, instead of being all into one or the other. But you got to be, I find in the residential space and in niche markets, you got to be good at what you do. You got to take the time to be really good at what you do and deliver a phenomenal product. And if you can do that, you're going to excel in those spaces regardless of what the market's doing. So for us, we're going to definitely stick to doing some small residential work, some niche stuff where we specialize mostly in utility work. That's where we do the best. Sewer, water, septic, all that stuff is what we we like doing and what we're good at, but we want to kind of stay small, medium sized in doing that. We're not looking to get huge or go nuts, especially with the way the economy's going right now. So keep your overhead low, keep a good mix of stuff and kind of go from there.
Absolutely.
What about yourself?
Just make it work with what we got.
Yeah.
We've grown a little bit, but we're renting some stuff right now, and we're probably going to just keep renting, just in case it slows down a little bit. We're running about 20 guys all together with office and field, and I'm really not trying to go past that. I'm trying to, get to about $8 million a year. That's where I'm going to stick for a while.
Yep.
Just kind of keep it on cruise control. It's going to keep us paying the bills and also help us get out of debt. And if we can do that, I'm hoping within the next 3 years we're zero debt, and we're trading in some equipment, getting some new stuff, and we have enough residual value still in them that we're not having to put massive payments anymore on equipment, and cuts our margins down a little better, and we can, in a way, lower our prices a little better, be a little more competitive. But not to the point we're cutting our leg off either.
Well, that's the thing. If you can keep your overhead low, like overhead is going to kill you. It'll sink you so fast, and especially in a slowing market when people are undercutting. When you got massive overhead, you don't have the option to start cutting rates and trimming, and you can't play that game anymore, right? You're stuck. You're hoop. So it's definitely the smart way to go for sure.
Yeah, I've grown as much as I want to grow for right now. I'm going to wait and see how the market looks and the economy's looking over the next, 36, 48 months. But for now, just kind of keep it on cruise. I just want to bill the most money I can bill with the amount of guys I got and the amount of equipment I got, which I think I can do very well. And that's really it, man. I don't want to go much above that. That's about as far above and beyond I want to go with it.
Well, that's the thing. If you can get efficient, you can get good, you can get your numbers hard, you can get everything as it is right now, it puts you in a really good spot, and then that's when you're growing, you're always trying to grow. And a lot of the stuff gets forgotten and left behind in the dark in the backside. And those problems aren't so bad when there's an insane amount of work coming down the pipeline. You can kind of mask them and make it through. When work starts slowing down, those problems get real big, real quick, and that's where a lot of guys that's where they get screwed. That's the end of you have a big boom, they get massive, work slows down, all the problems come up and they disappear.
Yeah, and then you start seeing their equipment at Ritchie Brothers or the Holt dealer or RDO. You're like, what happened? Oh, they won't belly up. Oh.
On the plus side, equipment pricing is coming down to a reasonable rate now.
Still can't get anything.
No, you can't. Yeah.
6 to 8 months still on. Yeah, it's crazy. If I was going out on my own right now, honestly, I don't know if I would yet. Right now, I'm not saying that to deter anyone, but I would try to catch the beginning of a boom. I wouldn't try to get it at the end of it. This is that we're on the end of it right now. This is going to be it's going to start leveling out. It's not going to be we're not going to be blowing and going like we were for the last 4 years. It's going to be more, there's enough work there. There's enough work for everybody at the table. This is where you're going to see, as Luke Payne said it the other time he was on the show, you're going to have to tighten up them bootstraps a little bit and hold on a little bit. But we're going to get through it, especially if you're established and you got good clients, you got good guys, you got a good rental rep you're working with, you got people that care about you. If you got suppliers that'll work with you, and you got people that truly care about you, and you got good clients, you got good people working behind the scenes in the office, you got a good estimating team, good project management team, you'll be fine.
100%. But you're not building that overnight. So
no.
If you're thinking of starting out, and you're going to do it now, you got to do it small. And the big thing with that, like when I started in Canada, we were in a recession. We were in a downturn. That's when I started. Dumbest time to start a company, hands down. You got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to work off to do it. And the one thing that always came back to that was you have to be delivering extreme value. You got to know your market, you got to know what you're doing, and you got to deliver amazing value to the customers to be able to stand out in that market. there's always going to be a customer. There's always going to be work to be had, but there's a whole lot less when you're in a recession, and you got to do a whole lot more to get it. It's not as easy as just showing up and being there, and I think that's what this market down here has had for a lot of years. Is there was more work than there was guys to do it. So a lot of people could just show up and do it. And I think you're going to see a lot of guys around here fade away pretty quick once that work really starts drying up here.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, though, is I think we're going to get through this recession down here a little bit better than other parts of the country. It's still booming here.
Oh, yeah.
There's still businesses moving here. There's tons of people still moving here. Prime
100%.
example is you. I think we're going to be like how California was in the mid '80s. It's they had about a 20-year boom, and then it kind of fell out. But they're still building in California.
Well, that's the thing.
It never really stopped. It's just they don't get the light like they do now.
It's not going to be so much a recession in Dallas as it's just going to be going back to normality. Is
People are going to think the bottom fell out. They're still going to be pulling 100 permits a month. But oh my God, the bottom fell out. Dude, they're starting 100 projects this month. What are you talking about?
You were living in a dream world for a while. You're just back to reality here.
Yeah, this is where everybody else in the country's like right now.
And that's what we looked at coming down here. That was the big thing. And with everything that was going in the economy and stuff, that's one thing we really looked at was, how bad is it really going to be here when things level off? And the best thing I looked at was it's going to go back to normal. It's not going to be crash, burn, 2008 all over again. I think it's going to level out to a normal space, and guys that are really putting in work and doing things right, they're going to have a spot in the market still.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Devon, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man.
Hey man, thanks
and
for having me.
Really appreciate it. And we're definitely gonna have you back on. Definitely gonna be a return guest. You've definitely got the radio voice, which is great. Doc and those guys, I love Doc, but that dude's like, oh, let me tell you, love him to death. I'm gonna have him back on too, though. He's a trip. Did you watch his episode?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah,
oh, dude, he's funny. A trip. I gotta probably get you two together. You two would probably be awesome. Hysterical.
Yeah.
Love that guy. But if you guys would like and subscribe. Also, please comment some things you'd like us to talk about. We just did start that series. I'm doing a couple of episodes now where I'm just talking, and it's talking about kind of starting your own business, kind of what me and Devon talked about tonight. This is still a regular episode interview, but I wanted to try this out, incorporating talking about starting a business, talking about how to set yourself up for success to be a contractor. So please comment. Let us know if you think of some things you want us to discuss. And when I have someone else on, we'll bring it up. And like I said, this show's for you guys. If there's some things you want me to talk about, email me. My email is listed below in the comments, or just put it in the comments, and I'll get to it, guys. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.